Welcome on into a rizzed up edition of Inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller along with Jeff Nowak getting ready for Week 11, Cleveland Browns. And, of course, the big talk this week, Jameis Winston visiting. We got a big piece on the offensive line coming back for this Black and Gold squad. And can that energy we saw last game carry into this matchup? Feeling good, Jeff, obviously. I think everybody in the Who Dat Nation needed that W, of course, but man, oh man, what a difference it makes in a week with everyone's attitude.
Yeah. And you could feel it in the locker room too. Like I can't remember who it was. It might have been Sean Fazend who was talking about like I didn't realize how dead it had been in the locker room, because it's like, you know, you just kind of, you're in it every day and it's like, yeah, this is okay, this is how it is. And then suddenly, like this week, it was just like, oh, look at that. There's people and they seem to be enjoying themselves. Yeah. There's a kind of mini basketball hoop in the middle of the locker room. And, you know, during the losing streak, it did not get used all that often. It was basically Foster Morrow and nobody else. Just like he was just practicing his free throws and occasionally maybe DeMario or somebody else. It's been, you know, there's been a lot going on. They replaced the rim and, you know, it's feeling good in there. But we'll see. You know, that's the thing. Everyone's super excited right now. Right. But this is kind of the week where you really find out about some stuff, right? Because all of these good vibes, all of this positivity and whatever, everyone's loving on Darren Rizzi right now for good reason, all this stuff. If the Saints go out and lay a dud and get rocked by the Browns and Jameis Winston, that's all going to go away real fast. And you're going to have a bye week to ruminate on it. And like no one's going to be feeling good about the changes at that point, or at least not the fans. So this is an important game for Riz, for this team, to show that it wasn't just that kind of one game boost in energy that kind of fades. And once you have to kind of get back into your routine, and this is not a good Browns team. Let's be real about it. Not a good team. They're 2-7. You know, they are coming off a bye, so they are rested and they are healthy. They don't have a single player on their injury report that was held out of practice, right? They were all, I think there was only one player that was limited. Everyone else was full on their injury report. Actually, they added a second player on Thursday, so they have two now. But so we'll see. But okay, this episode, it's going to be our traditional preview episode. We didn't do one last week because I felt like, well, does it even matter? Like we'll see. Let's just watch the game.
Plus, we knew the Falcons pretty well, too. So it was like, we know, been there, done that.
We've already done a preview episode before Falcons game. So we didn't really have to do it again. It's the same team. This week, there's a lot that we don't know. So we're going to kind of get into the full preview episode. We're going to have this segment. We're going to do a rundown as we have been. We're going to go through some of the news of the week, although there really hasn't been much. So we'll go through all that, talk about Erik McCoy coming back. That's going to be the majority of it. Second segment, we'll have Chris Easterling. He's a Browns reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. A lot of good stuff from him. He follows the team. He's going to tell us all about what he refers to as the Jameisance, which is good. I'm gonna keep using that. Definitely going to throw that out in the pregame show on Sunday.
We've got the resurrection, so take that.
Ooh, the resurrection versus the Jameisance. I like it. I like it. It sounds like a sci-fi, like a sci-fi movie, but one that is on the Sci-Fi Channel, like SYFY. Right. You know, like Crocosaurus versus Shark on the Sharknado,
right, or something like that.
Yeah. So we'll get into all that. A lot of good stuff from him, kind of breaking down what to expect from the Browns. Final segment, we'll do X factors as we have been, and that's where we'll talk more about Jameis and what some Saints players had to say about Jameis in the locker room this week, because obviously how that matchup goes, Jameis versus the Saints defense, is going to be a major determining factor in how this game goes. But let's get back to this first segment. Not a ton of news. You know, we talked about one of the only bits of news going into the week was Connor McGovern got released, which is a pretty strong indicator that they expect Erik McCoy to play. I don't think, Shane Lemieux is your backup center now, and he is back on the roster. But, if you were even halfway thinking that Erik wasn't going to go, you would have just kept Connor on the roster, because they didn't even fill that roster spot. Like, it's still open for Erik. So like there was no reason they couldn't just keep him until Thursday or Friday just in case. But they didn't. They cut him. So we'll see. We'll get more on that in a second. Kool-Aid McKinstry was upgraded to full on Thursday. So looks like you're going to get him back. So the cornerback tandem should be, in my opinion, Alontae Taylor and Kool-Aid McKinstry on the outside.
A glimpse of the future for sure.
Right, exactly. Ugo Amadi in the slot. They could go a different route. That's the route that makes sense to me. And then you'll have Shamar John Charles, Rico Payton backing those guys up. Maybe one of those guys in inactive if you need to make the numbers work somewhere else. but that's a good sign to get those guys out there.
And for anybody that thought that Marshawn was slow playing an injury here, he was inactive Thursday Night Football against the Eagles. So it looks like that injury still carries on with him.
Yeah, either he is really trying to sell it so that he doesn't get, no one accuses him of faking an injury, or the hamstring injury is legitimate.
Legit, right.
Honestly, and that's why I said, like, to me, the bigger concern wasn't that he was making business decisions, because I didn't think he was. I think he was actually getting hurt. And
that's
so
problem.
That's Washington's problem now. And they lost on Thursday, and they didn't look particularly good doing it. They looked solid in the first half, but then they got kind of boat raced in the second half. They had a late touchdown. So who knows? Maybe he'll help them. Maybe they'll figure things out. But every year there's kind of these rookies that show up early, and then it seems like they hit a wall a little bit. And you have to wonder about Jaden. Either way, they're going to have Marshawn. They're going to have a strong roster going forward. So that's good for him. Another guy who's hurt that is really a bummer, because I thought he was playing really well, is Pete Werner, a DMP for the second straight day on Thursday.
Right.
Another day where he was out there in a helmet, in full uniform, watching, not participating. And so that obviously doesn't engender a lot of confidence that he'll be able to go out there dealing with a hand injury. We don't know the extent of it, but Darren Rizzi did compare it to the situation Willie Gay was dealing with. I don't think he had surgery like Willie did, but it's probably some form of a fracture, something like that. And so the question is, can he play through it? You would like to see him get a practice in, and we're recording this before Friday's practice. So if he does go out there and get some work in, maybe he has a chance to play. But it's not looking good right now. And that would be a big negative if they're not able to get him in there.
No, especially with a team that I think you expect a heavy dose of that rushing attack with, Nick Chubb and co. That could be an issue. And obviously we know the Saints struggles against anybody's rushing attack.
Right. And Pete's return really changed things, in my opinion, for this group. So
solid tackler.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's just, it's not even the tackling, it's being in the right place. It's getting to the right spots on the field so that you're in position. Like, I don't think the issue has been Willie Gay missing tackles. The issue has been Willie Gay not being able to get to the tackles he needs to make, right? Like the Chris Godwin touchdown against the Bucs. He overran that play to the sideline. And it's like, no, the sideline is your friend. You don't want to be making that play. You're the linebacker. You're not a cornerback. You don't want to be getting to the sideline and running back into the field to play. You want to be forcing him to the sideline. The only thing you can't do there is allow him to cut back inside of you, and that's exactly what he did. And there's been a few examples of that. And I think that's one of the things that coaches get a little frustrated with Willie Gay on, is he has a tendency to get out of position, and he might get a little over aggressive and overrun a play, and then you allow big plays. Like that's the biggest job of a linebacker, is to make sure that if the play gets to you, it ends there. Because once you get past the second level, which is the linebacker level, you're asking smaller defensive backs, Tyrann Mathieu, to go up and make a tackle on a big dude. And that's tough to do, right? When Bijan Robinson gets past the linebackers, he has the ability to carry Tyrann Mathieu into the end zone like he did in that on Sunday, right? Like you make that tackle. If you go low and you force him out of bounds, whatever, you're asking for trouble. So if Pete's not out there, it's going to be on Willie to play his keys and to stay in position and not overrun plays. And we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, definitely a biggie for sure.
All right, last bit. First, one small thing. Jari Evans going to the Ring of Honor on Sunday. That's exciting. That's good for him. One thing that's funny about Jari is there are older players playing in the NFL right now, or at least like Jason Peters, for example. He signed to a practice squad. I'm not sure if he's playing or whatever. He's older than Jari Evans. Jari looks like he could still play. Jari's 40? He's 41, which is kind of crazy. Like Cam Jordan played with Jari. And it's kind of crazy to think that a guy Cam Jordan was teammates with is going into the Ring of Honor. But it's going to be kind of cool. You don't change those names very often, right? So anytime you add a name up there, it's a big deal.
Massive for him. And I know he talked about a little bit with Mike Hoss on the Saints Hour, saying my kids didn't get to see me play, but at least they'll get to see my name up in the dome. And obviously that's pretty damn cool. And he's appreciative to the Saints and the organization, Mrs. B too.
Yeah. And that kind of segues into if if there's another interior lineman that ends up going into the Ring of Honor, it may very well be Erik McCoy, a guy who's coming back this week. You know, Teron Armstead might get up there before him. If he does, I don't know. That's tough. Like these guys will definitely be like Saints Hall of Famers. The Ring of Honor is a tougher question. Like Drew Brees definitely going to be in there, but Alvin almost assuredly is going to be in there. But we'll see. Either way, Erik McCoy finally coming back. He's been out since week 3. Groin surgery. He's been limited in practice Wednesday and Thursday, but I really just think that's, you're ramping him in. You're just trying not to overload him. The way everyone's talking about it, he is fully expected to play. This is all part of the plan. And he makes a big, big, big difference for this offense in a lot of different ways. And it's just going to be good to see him out there. Now, do I expect them to be dominant like they were in week 1 and 2 just because he's there? No. But I do think he's going to make a big difference in the run game. I do think he's going to make a big difference in pass protection. And I think his presence is going to allow you to extend more drives because you're not going to get blown up on the interior the way you have been a little bit too much in this 7-game stretch where he hasn't played.
No, like you mentioned, huge for the run game. And it's going to be interesting to see behind Alvin now. It looks like it's going to be the Jordan Mims show, obviously, with Jamal Williams not looking too good right now. So, anxious to see how much of that McCoy factor helps with this run game because, yeah, it's definitely needed. And as you mentioned, probably the best offensive piece on this team besides Alvin, obviously.
Yeah, I'm curious if we end up seeing Jamal go to IR to free up a spot because they need a spot to bring Nephi Sewell back. And if they don't activate Nephi Sewell to the active roster this week, he's done for the year. So maybe that's something they're okay with. Maybe they will just allow him to end his season on IR. Maybe his return to practice, he's been full, but it hasn't gone the way they had hoped, and they're just going to be content with doing that. But Jamal, I don't see him because by the time Jamal's back healthy, you're going to look at Kendre and be like, all right, get in there, kid. And so
I'm not going to miss the 2 carries for 3 yards, so no big deal.
Exactly. But no, so back to Erik McCoy, we had Mark Schlereth, a guy whose opinion I really respect a lot. Like every time, like Mark always seems to hit the nail on the head with his analysis, and he covered the Saints in week 1. He watched how good this offense looked with Erik McCoy in there. And then he kind of saw the downfall. And this is what he had to say when he was asked about, Erik and his impact and all that.
Yeah, no, there's no question. I mean, you look at the downfall of the New Orleans Saints this year, and it's really their offensive line that got decimated by injuries. McCoy started, and then obviously, your guys starting right guard got injured, and so there's been issues up front. And listen, I don't care how quote unquote skilled you are. How many good wide receivers you have. If you can't control the line of scrimmage, you do not win in the National Football League. And McCoy is one of those guys that is exceptional. The other thing is one of the things that normally happens in the NFL is the center position is challenged from the standpoint you got to snap the ball, right? You've got a snap hand, you've got an off hand, and it makes it a little bit harder to play that way because you got to secure the snap, shotgun, and all those things. So one of the things the NFL does all the time, or our teams do, is they walk up linebackers, they walk up A-gap blitzers, they walk people up, and they try to get 5 one-on-ones. One of the big things they try to do is isolate the center in pass protection because a lot of times the center is not a very good pass protector, and his job is harder because you got to snap the ball. So that's one of those places where teams will take advantage, especially when you bring in a backup center. And you see it time and time again throughout the National Football League. So it's just smart football is what it is. And so that has really been one of the big downfalls to 7 straight losses to the New Orleans Saints. To me, it's more than anything is they lost players on their offensive front, on their offensive line. And the first 2 weeks of the season, man, they were protecting their quarterback. They were running the snot out of the ball. They were crushing people. And then all of a sudden guys started getting hurt, and the result was they can't win, and that's a big issue with just with the NFL in general. And McCoy is one of those guys. He's just a damn good player.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, running the snot out of the football.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I really respect Mark Schlereth's opinion, and what position he played in the NFL, he was a guard and he was a center.
Right, been there, done that.
So he knows what he's talking about. But I agree. Like, you know, we talked about this in the last episode. Like you mentioned, hey, it wasn't a huge issue at center. And like, I think a lot of it is you don't see what you're not getting at center. And with a guy like Connor McGovern, like, I think you survived, but it was not a position of strength by any stretch. And if you go back and you watch the tape, a lot of plays that got blown up against the Falcons, it was because you had interior pressure coming right up in Derek Carr's grill, and you would see Connor hanging off the guy. And that's the type of thing that, yeah, Eric's not going to win every rep, but he's going to get you out of bad situations a lot more than you realize. And that's what Derek said when he was asked about it, Derek Carr, when he talked about it this week. So let's hear that clip.
It would never be something like, if you have a fantasy team, you would never understand why he's important. Like you would never understand, unless you're playing Madden. You need someone with a good rating, I guess. You need him. But just to the naked eye, if you're just watching the game, you would never, unless he gets just run over. No one ever talks about the center. But what he is able to do for us, and some of the blocks we ask him to get to and reach, and I've only been around a couple guys that can do some things that he can do, and him, Rodney Hudson's one of them. I'll stop naming people before someone gets upset, but just the things he's able to do and the way he's able to communicate, and like I said, the unscouted looks, the stuff that you don't practice, that someone throws a wrench at you, he feels the pressure coming. We didn't talk about that, but he fixes it, and really then our time on task together, just the repetitions, the blitzes, us watching it together, the blitz meeting, we sit next to each other, watching it, communicate and see it the same way. Those reps that we've, put in the bank, those things, those are like gold, because then it comes up in a game and you do it. And so, like I said before, I thought our guys handled that stuff really well. But, for a quarterback, it's nice when he's there, because, you know exactly what you're getting, exactly, that he knows the calls to make and all those things to put everyone else on the same page to do their job.
I was going to say something with McCoy too. Obviously, takes a little bit more off the plate of Derek Carr with the calls that Eric's now in charge of making.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And this offense, and Clint Kubiak talked a little bit about this in his presser. We don't have to play the clip, but this offense does want the center to make those protection calls. Like it's part of the scheme. Is the center is relied on a lot to do that kind of stuff, and so like you're adding that back. You're adding a guy who you trust that can do that and has spent a lot of time in this system and was there all training camp and more so like the guys around him trust him to do that stuff. He's the leader of that group. Like he's the guy that, that they joke like, hey, they kind of like move in packs. The offensive line kind of moves in packs. Well, and this is kind of a joke, but it's also at the same time, like Erik McCoy is the guy that when he yells and be like, everyone get over here, like they're running. Like you talk about Trevor Penning and Tali Fuaga and these young guys who are kind of learning, and even Caesar, who's been here just as long almost as Erik, like that he is the leader of that group. And, so you're getting that back, but also you're getting a very, very good center too. Like there's a balance of like, hey, yeah, you want that leader, you want that guy who you trust to make those calls. But then at the same time, he's also really good as a player. Like he can do stuff that other guys can't do. So no, that is a big difference. And we've talked a lot about it. We can talk it to death. We'll see, I don't know if there's going to be a little rust involved. He's missed a lot of time. He's been out since week 3. He says physically he feels like he's back, but I do think there's a level of like, you need a couple reps on the field before you really kind of get that. So we'll see, but no, like this offense changed dramatically when he went down. And hopefully, I don't know if you're going to, the weeks 1 and 2 were, I think, a little bit of a mirage based on the teams you were facing. And you had all of your talented players in there. You had all your pass catchers. You had all this. But I do think you should be able to, from a run game perspective, get back to a lot of what you were able to do in weeks 1 and 2. And so we'll see if that happens.
No, that's the big thing with this Brown squad, too. The defense, especially that defensive front's a huge challenge for the Saints this game.
Oh, yeah. We'll talk about that more in the final segment. But one other thing, and this is back to a Mark Schlereth take, that he's not even talking about the Saints. He's actually talking about the Bears. But I'm going to read it because this is such a great bit by him and also true. And he says, I look at Ryan Poles, the general manager of the Bears, and I said this from day one because people were all excited and they had their panties in a wad over, hey, man, we've got a Dunze. And we went out and we got Keenan Allen, we've got DJ Moore, we've got Cole Kmet, we've got Swift at the running back position. So many weapons. I heard this time and time again. You don't build a team from the outside in. You build it from the inside out. And you get so excited about weapons. I just know this. If you don't block people, none of those weapons can actually produce. If you don't control the line of scrimmage, you realize that it takes 10 other guys to do their job exceptionally well for a wide receiver to sniff a football. And so we are so twisted, and I think it's fantasy football that has twisted us. Like, we are so twisted as fans about what wins in the NFL, and we all think it's wide receivers. Again, this is Mark Schlereth talking. I'm reading it, but it's Mark Schlereth's take. And we all think it's wide receivers. How wide receivers have duped America to believe that they're important is beyond me. Of a sport that's completely dependent, they're the most dependent player in the National Football League. Everyone else has to do their job for them to have success. And it baffles me that America thinks we're one receiver away from winning a championship. There is no team that has ever been one receiver away from winning jack squat. And so we keep filling into this narrative. We keep falling into this belief. We have general managers that buy into this baloney. It is garbage. Absolute garbage.
That was a fire from Schlereth.
So first of all, I should have just played that clip, but I wanted to read it because it's like he's passionate. He got worked up about that.
Right.
And it wasn't even about the Saints, but I agree. Like, one of the things that I agree with the Saints on is that you need to build through the lines. And I keep seeing people like, they haven't invested enough in the offensive line. They have invested in the offensive line. You look at all the first-round picks on this offensive line. Trevor Penning was a first-round pick. Cesar Ruiz was a first-round pick. Tali Fuaga was a first-round pick. Erik McCoy was a second-round pick, but they traded up, and he was the first pick on that draft. So, by and large, that you're looking at a guy who was effectively your top option in that draft. And so you're looking at 4 of your 5 offensive line positions, and the guy who's not playing that is still technically on your roster, Ryan Ramczyk, was a first-round pick. So, like, the investment is there. And I know, like, people watch a team draft offensive linemen in the first round. Oh, they could have got this guy. They could have got this guy. They could have got this. Though, like, there's a reason.
Listen to Schlereth, right?
Yeah, like it really is easy to get all wrapped up in, like, you look at it like the Giants drafting Saquon Barkley. How'd that work out for them, right? You look at the Falcons spending all these assets on Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson, and it wasn't until this year when they figured out the quarterback position and they kind of sorted it out. Okay, now you have a chance to be successful, and that's why, like, it all kind of feeds into, okay, why is a player like Erik McCoy so important to what the Saints do on offense? Why is a guy like Trevor Penning kind of coming into his own a little bit and playing with confidence? That changes the game for you. And, so I agree with Mark completely on that take. Like, I think the wide receiver position is very overvalued. And when you're an elite team and you can add a wide receiver to that, when you have the offensive line figured out and you have the run game working and you have a quarterback and then you add a star wide receiver to that mix, that can change things for you. But if you are a team that does not feel like you are stout, you are full up on the offensive line, and you're going after a star wide receiver when you have an opportunity to continue to build those lines, it's a mistake every time, in my opinion. And that's why I agree with Mark on that.
No, we're going to get a workout with that O-line this week, especially with a dude like Myles Garrett in town.
Whew. That dude, I think I was on with Tommy or maybe Newell, I can't remember. And it was like, he's probably the closest thing we have to the Incredible Hulk in reality. If you painted him green, he could star in a Marvel movie without CGI. That's like, you watch him out there, I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. Like, we'll talk about that in the back end, but man, he's different. That dude's different, man.
No, and obviously, kind of like we had those great years of Aaron Donald. He's along those lines.
Yeah, but even Aaron Donald, like, physically, he was not as nearly as imposing as, like, athletically, he was as imposing as they come at the defensive tackle position. And, he's just he was a beast. But, like, Myles, like there's certain guys you look at, like Danielle Hunter is another example like that.
Yeah.
Like, you look at him and be like, wait, he wasn't a star at LSU? How? Explain that to me. Like you just look at the guy like, yeah, I understand at the NFL level why he's dominating people, but then you look at his college stats, you're like, Les, what the f happened?
You could ask that many times, but less.
But that's the story of Les Miles at LSU. Like, you have these elite star players. Like, at least Ed Ogeron took advantage of, his lineup where he had two of the top wide receivers in the nation. Like, like Les had Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr., and they did nothing. They were a running team. Right. But anything else you want to hit before we move on?
No, just we're talking news, and the big news I know we're going to get into. Anxious to see Jameis Winston and what kind of pregame speech he brings to the Superdome on Sunday.
Ooh, you're going to get some W's in there.
I'm wondering if he whips that out in the dome.
That's my that's
I got to watch what I'm saying to whip things out.
Eating them W's. Most bizarre thing anyone has ever done in the Superdome, and there's been a lot of weird stuff in the Superdome.
Did you see that spelling bee clip somebody put out on Twitter?
I didn't. Someone asked Tyron about it. He hadn't seen it either. I actually didn't see that, but
okay, yeah, just an awkward. He's with these kids and sits down and ends up falling down in his chair. Just another amusing, silly moment with Jameis.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. But all right, let's wrap up this segment. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. We're going to come back with Chris Easterling, Browns reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. We'll talk about Jameis, the Jameisance, everything that's been going on with the Browns. Kind of a weird season going from Deshaun Watson to Jameis, to expectations, to no expectations, to whatever. We'll break it all down. We'll come back in the final segment, do X factors as we do before Saints games. Who dat? We will be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold, getting ready for the barn burner, the matchup everyone's been waiting for. Week 11, Browns 2-7 at Saints 3-7, the Jameis Winston Bowl. I'm Jeff Nowak alongside Steve Geller, as always, and we are bringing in special guest Chris Easterling, Browns reporter for the Beacon Journal. He's hanging out at the Browns facility right now as we record this. You can see all the step and repeat in the background. It's great. It's great inside access. Chris, how you doing this morning?
Not too bad, fellas. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Definitely appreciate your time. We know it's a busy time.
Just always things going on up here in Northeast Ohio when it comes to the professional football team.
Yeah, and I think these two teams have a lot in common in a few ways. One of them being, things just haven't gone the way you'd hoped this year in terms of a lot of things, in terms of the quarterback, in terms of the record, in terms of whatever. Can you just kind of go through what this first 9 games for the Browns has been like, the Deshaun Watson experience? It's a really good defense, but I don't know if you're getting it all the time. And what is the relationship with the fans and the team and Jameis Winston, all that? What can you summarize that for us pretty quick?
Cluster. Fill in the rest of that word however you'd like to, however you like to finish that word. Look, it started, there was a lot of promise coming into this season because of what they did last year. 11 wins, go to the playoffs, all of that. You got this defense, you got this generational player, Myles Garrett. But you have this question about the offense and specifically about the quarterback. How is he going to be? You haven't gotten a full season out of Deshaun Watson, and guess what? You still haven't gotten a full season out of Deshaun Watson, and it was obvious during training camp that he didn't look like he had fully – he was the same quarterback. He still wasn't the same quarterback, even he had been last year when he was healthy. So – you get out and you say, well, maybe it's just my eyes deceiving me. Maybe he'll, it's just camp, rust, whatever. He'll get out there games, and it never got better. It was indecisiveness. It was holding on to the ball too long. It was staring, it was like staring at a wide open receiver, but then like throwing to somebody else or running into a sack or whatever. And it was torpedoed. It basically torpedoed this team's season because, look, they'll say whatever they want. They're handcuffed to this guy because of the contract, because of all of that. The fans are getting frustrated because, it's once again a Browns face plan after a great season. And so a couple weeks ago, they're playing Cincinnati. I think it was week 7, and he gets hurt. Non-contact, drops back, plants, tears his Achilles. And there is a momentary cheer from the crowd.
Ugh.
momentary cheer for them. Now, this is the same fan base that cheered Tim Couch when he got concussed like 20 years ago. So, but it was momentary, and I think not to defend the fans, but I think it quit once they sort of realized, oh, this isn't just tweaking an ankle or what. This is one of those type of injuries. But still, it's a bad look. It's a terrible look. And at that game, that one game was a game that Jameis was actually third string. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the second-year guy out of UCLA, was backing up. And I apologize for I'm going long on this, but just so he comes in and he's just awful. To be blunt, he's not very good, and he gets hurt, which means Jameis, who's the number 3 emergency quarterback, comes in for the final drive, and they go down. They score a touchdown. Their defense had left them in the game, so they're actually an onside kick away from potentially stealing this game against Cincinnati. They don't. Cincinnati recovers the onside kick because it's almost impossible to get an onside kick. But the next week, Jameis starts against Baltimore, and the Jameisance begins.
Jameisance, that's good. I never heard that.
He goes out, throws for 334. It's the full Jameis Winston experience. There's a receiver in the back corner. There's one play. There's a receiver in the back corner of the end zone. There's a receiver like mid left of the end zone, and he splits the difference and throws it to the Ravens safety that's between them, who just happens to drop it. Well, later in the game, they're down a point, I think it was, and he throws a ball right to Kyle Hamilton, and Hamilton bobbles it, drops it. Next play, because this is Jameis Winston, has this horseshoe, hidden somewhere. Next play, game-winning touchdown to Cedric Tillman. And at that moment, we had talked to Jameis a few times, but when he's back up, it was the full, Reverend Jameis, it is, and it's fully, the team, everybody is just fully bought in because, you can't help but fall in love in a way with this guy because of, he's so personable, and you're not quite sure if he's not perpetually just 10% preparing for, I think I saw David Ubben tweeted out, at all times it seems like he's rehearsing for a film that's
never going to get made. Yeah, it's exactly correct. It's exactly correct.
But at the same time, it's he's talking about him and the white boy he's quoting the white boy from Detroit. It's like, but in that regard, I mean, he's at least salvaged some interest in this season because look, he's a competent NFL quarterback, which is not what they've had really since Joe Flacco at the end of last season.
Right.
And I think there's some comps between Joe and Jameis in the gunslinger, interceptions be danged, mindset. But so that's how we got here, 2-7, terrible quarterback play, injuries all over the place. But this may be as healthy as they have been all season. Also, relatively speaking, there's some guys on IR, but in terms of the guys that are available, I mean, that was the shortest injury report we got all season, even back to training camp yesterday. So knock on wood, maybe this team at least get a little healthy, and who knows what the last month and a half bring.
What scares me going into this matchup, honestly, is the Browns' run game. And I know it hasn't been anything to wow you, but I know Nick Chubb's back in the mix, but this Saints defense has been just awful on, stopping the run. It seems like the rushing lanes are wide open for guys. There's contact. It's like 3-4 yards in, and it's not good. Just wondering the status of the running back room there and how Nick Chubb is feeling in his recovery, obviously coming back off a really tough injury.
Well, I mean, it's twofold. One, the running back room, I think, is as healthy as it's been all season because Jerome Ford is back from he came back right before the bye with he had a hamstring injury, kept him out a couple of weeks. So he's
Those
back.
hamstrings are everywhere, killing folks.
They're all over the place in this building. It's like an epidemic. But Nick, we talked to Nick yesterday, and he said the bye helped him. Kind of got refreshed, went back to Georgia. Which means he probably went back, squatted about 800 pounds, couple of Ford pickups, and
right.
So I just think playing. I don't think we'll ever see the Nick Chubb we saw pre-injury. I just don't. Multiple injuries on the same knee. I just don't know if that. I mean, you guys remember from even when he was at Georgia. I mean, right. I don't know if you ever get that guy again. But if you get 70% of him, and I think by the end of the year they might get close to 70% of him, that's still a pretty good running back that can at least move the chains and do, especially what this offense wants to do. And behind an offensive line now that's fairly healthy for the first time and playing together, multiple games in a row. So those two things combined, I think, give the run game some hope. But up until this point, it's been something that's been sort of lacking beyond the consistent passing game. It's been the struggle with this offense more than anything else.
I mean, Nick Chubb stats, 42 for 113 and a touchdown, 2.7 yards per carry. The Saints will, I assure you, the Saints will do as good a job as they can of allowing 5.8 yards per carry and getting that number up where it should be. So don't worry, Nick's going to be just fine this week. But also don't take that as a comeback, because that does not mean anything against the Saints. Guys like Kamani Vidal and Audric Estime are blowing them up. Either way, my question is about the wide receiver room, because, I felt like I knew what it was going into the year, because you had Amari Cooper and some of these other guys, and Deshaun Watson's going to throw him the ball, but I never kind of got the impression that anyone wanted to play with Deshaun Watson. I don't even know if that's true or not. It just, watching it from afar, it sure looked like his receivers weren't exactly thrilled about running routes for him, or catching passes or whatever. But,
well, you never knew where the ball was going to go. I mean, you didn't know if it was going to be behind you. Was it going to be down around your ankles? Was it going to be up around your, it was just the entire consistency that Deshaun struggles provided. I mean, the frustration was very much there in that receiving room.
No, I'm sure. And so I guess my question is, who's the top receiver? Is it Jerry Jeudy? Is it Cedric Tillman? Like, who's actually the guy when you're looking at this offense? If a team is saying, I want to take away their top option, who is that right now?
You know who I honestly think Cedric Tillman's emerged. Jerry Jeudy is Jerry Jeudy, who, to me, the guy is David Njoku, the tight end. He's, again, we talk about injuries. He's been battling an ankle injury over the first half of the season. He got in the opener against Dallas. And the last couple of games before the bye, you started to see the Njoku we had that played last year, was Pro Bowler. And, even coming back from the bye, he even looked a little trimmer coming off of the bye. I'm not going to ask what David did during the bye because I'm afraid to know. But, if they can get David back into somewhat of that form he had last year, he was always option number 2 behind Amari before Amari got traded to Buffalo. Yeah. So I think, he is a matchup problem when he's locked in. You really saw it last year in December, especially when Flacco came in and could get him the ball, what he can do to defenses and the struggles he can create. So I would watch for David Njoku as much as anybody in this receiver room. But if Cedric Tillman sort of become the guy, though, that they're trying to, they really need to know what they have in this second year guy out of Tennessee. And he was a 3rd round pick, but he was their first pick in 2023. So they need to find out, and he's answered the bell. So they're developing a little bit more of a receiving group, but it's still, there's no Amari Cooper in there, prime Amari Cooper. They don't have that yet, unless Jerry Jeudy or Cedric Tillman become that.
Did David, am I making this up? Didn't David burn his face off last year or something like that? Like something crazy like that?
Might have. just sitting around on a Saturday afternoon, and we get a release from the Browns that says, yeah, David Njoku's questionable for the game tomorrow. And it's like, what happened? Well, face and arm burns. Well, how did it happen? Fire pit accident. And that's their story, and they're sticking to it.
Right.
It's always something. I mean, I'm sure, you guys, the Saints have their, but with this team, I mean, if you're going to be mediocre to bad consistently, at least be dysfunctional. Put the fun and dysfunctional up here.
Guys, some of the local folks here are interested, obviously. Safety Grant Delpit, just curious what you think about his development since he's come to Cleveland.
I thought he was really playing his best football last year, and then he suffered a groin injury in December that, ironically, the same weekend that he got his extension, he signed his extension, he gets this groin injury that I think he would have played if they had if they had reached the divisional round. If they gotten past Houston, he was going to play that next week. This year, it's been sort of up and down with Grant, but that's everybody in this. That's been pretty much everybody on this defense. But I know I talked to Grant on Monday because just this, coming back to New Orleans, coming back to the Superdome, LSU, all of that, and I know he talked about how special this trip is for him. So I would expect a motivated Grant. I'd expect a guy which can be good and it can be bad. I'm sure you guys, again, watching him while he was at LSU, Grant's aggressiveness can sometimes be Grant's Achilles heel. It can be the thing that is weakness. And, because he'll come flying up trying to, knock you into Tuesday, and he'll bounce off you and the big play happens. But if he plays controlled, and it's sort of like Jameis, if Jameis can play this homecoming game under control, I think he'll play well. I mean, I like Grant as a player and as a core piece for this defense. It's just, can he play under control? Because when he plays under control, I think he's a really, really good safety, especially in this Jim Schwartz defense.
Yeah, you mentioned there's a few connections. You have Ethan Pochich, center, also an LSU guy. Yep. But yeah, even beyond that, Jameis Winston, obviously, Khaleke Hudson was here during training camp. Obviously, got signed off the practice squad. There's a few others. Cedric Tillman was a college teammate of Alontae Taylor, so it's going to be an interesting matchup between those two. But the most interesting one to me is Joe Woods, who was the Browns defensive coordinator a few years back, and in my opinion, was the scapegoat firing to keep Kevin Stefanski around, because I don't buy. And that was the year that the Saints went up there in the blizzard of the century, or whatever you want to call it. Steve was on the sideline for that nightmarish game where they announced, "Hey, if you're in the upper deck, come down to the lower bowl and huddle together for warmth so you don't die."
I had to drive. I live about 50 minutes south of Cleveland, 40 minutes south of Cleveland, 50 minutes to get to the lakefront. And I remember that drive, and I just remember where we parked it's like 100 yards from where we parked to the media entrance. And I thought I was going to die because we parked right on the lake side of the stadium. And I thought I was going to die. God bless you. That was the game. Speaking of David Njoku, who he warmed up shirtless.
Yes. Right.
So, but Joe Woods sort of sealed his own fate with a couple of, they played a game in Cincinnati where Cincinnati literally only had Jamar Chase and two white guys named Trent playing wide receiver. I'm dead serious. Trent Irwin and Trent
Taylor or something like that.
I can't remember what was the other Trent. One was Trenton. Anyways, and they botched this. They botched the coverage. They were botching coverages. They couldn't figure out how to cover Jamar and two guys named Trent. And they were open, like their secondary coach openly said, "Yeah, we didn't." It basically threw us off that they went from three of the best receivers in the league, because Higgins and Boyd, to just one. So we didn't know how to cover one receiver and two guys who might be working at Meyer, in their off time, if they weren't, in their spare time. So, so Joe I always loved Joe. Joe was great to deal with. Joe was, you guys have dealt with him. Joe's a great person, but it was time for a change. The defense I don't think he had buy-in from guys in the room, specifically one guy in particular who, you need to buy in from. So you go out, you
wait, who was it?
You might, him and Derek Carr might be introduced a couple of times.
Okay, I understand. You could say Myles Garrett. We could.
No, I figure it was obvious.
Just saying.
It might be obvious to you. It's not obvious to the people listening to the podcast.
Text, hey, that A&M LSU, thing. But anyway, I don't think Myles was a big fan of his. I don't think he felt like he was utilized under Joe well enough. But they go out to get Jim Schwartz, and Jim has, he's weaponized that defensive front, and you can notice a difference. I think it was the right time for a change. Long as meandering around to the answer to the question, but it's definitely a subplot. There's subplots across the board with his coaching staffs, with Kubiak and working with Stefanski, a number of the offensive guys working with Stefanski in Minnesota. So there's just there's definitely it's going to be interesting. It's a lot more. If this was 7-3 versus 7-2, I think there'd be a lot. There's so many storylines really that are baked into this matchup.
I actually forgot. Yeah, Myles Garrett and Erik McCoy are actually college teammates as well. So you have that too. There's a lot of them. But just to, my question that, Joe Woods, in my opinion, and he may have lost some guys. I kind of felt like after that 2022 season, and I watched Kevin Stefanski ask Deshaun Watson to throw it 35 times in a game that you need to have Nick Chubb run the ball. It's negative 20 degrees, run the goddamn ball. It's what the Saints did. It's why they won the game. Yeah. And I was just like, why is this guy still got a job? And I'm just curious, is this season, is it being looked at as, okay, this is the reason you shouldn't guarantee massive contracts to quarterbacks? Or is it being looked at as, hey, Kevin Stefanski's on the hot seat and he should be seriously looking at his job security? I'm just curious, how are you reading that right now? Because obviously we're close to the project. We just dealt with it. Coach is getting fired. So where are you at?
I think he's safe for now. Now, talk to me in January, talk to me in late December, see how these last 8 games go. But I think he's safe because I think he and Andrew Berry are sort of tied together, the general manager. And then on top of that, everybody was all in on Deshaun. Everybody is sort of handcuffed to that trade, to that contract, to everything about that. So I think he gets one more year regardless, barring a complete meltdown. Unless the last 8 games just go incredibly bad. So because of, again, I think there's an understanding that, look, we'll give you this pass. You're the only coach in the expansion Browns history that's actually gone to playoffs twice, had 2 winning seasons. And you're like the 3rd or 4th winningest coach in the franchise history. Yes. Wow.
Kind of crazy.
Yes. Wow.
Looking at the matchup too, I'm just curious, maybe a guy that we're not too familiar with that could be a game wrecker, either offensive or defensively, that you think could be a spark for this Browns team in the Superdome on Sunday.
I'm curious to see if Denzel Ward can actually hold on to an interception.
Okay.
Because, I think he's somehow one of the best cornerbacks in the league, but also one of the most underrated cornerbacks in the league. I just don't think people outside of Cleveland or the football guys really appreciate how good he is. He said a league leading 15 passes defense, and I think he's going to be big. Because if you can turn Derek over a couple of times, you get a couple of turnovers, I think that's where this game tilts is who wins that turnover, who turns the other team over more, and because it's two quarterbacks that are going to give you opportunities, and it's which team takes advantage of it. And Denzel Ward specifically, that's been a talking point this week is just the inability to get interceptions.
All right, Chris Easterling covering the Browns for the Beacon Journal. Great stuff. Appreciate your time. I know you're flying out here tomorrow. You have any plans for dinner? You have any targeted restaurants? We've
been looking around, but can't get any reservations. All the reservations are taken.
Oh no!
Wow.
I was looking at Mr. B's, a couple other places, Outpost 45. Gautreau's is a little too
fancy schmancy.
Too fancy schmancy for me.
You're looking for a steak. Chop House is one of my favorites. Maybe that's worth checking out. It's right in downtown.
I'll keep that in mind. Take a look at that.
Yeah, I know we're talking about expense and meals here, right? So it's not
corporate card.
Exactly. All right, Chris, man, appreciate your time. Great info, and enjoy the city.
I will. Thanks.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, no, that was a really good interview. Thanks again to Chris for coming on. And it's going to be, for a 2-7, 3-7 matchup. There are a lot of interesting storylines. Like we went over them. Jameis coming back, Joe Woods going against his former team, Erik McCoy, Myles Garrett, college teammates, Cedric Tillman, Alontae Taylor, college teammates, Tyrann Mathieu. I have a feeling really wants to get Jameis. We talked to Tyrann in the locker room, and he was just like, "Yeah, Jameis, throw it up there. let's see what happens."
Great stuff. Yeah, I used that rap for a report on WWO for sure when I heard that.
Yeah, and it's like I think what Tyrann said is basically, so we just have to catch the ones he throws to us. Because right? And that was, I remember when the Saints played the Bucks in 22. It was week 2, and after the game, Devin White went on Instagram Live and was like, "We knew he was going to throw us a couple. We just had to catch him." And that is how, like at the time we were just like, what a jerk. But then it was like, it's true. Right. Jameis is going to give you opportunities. It's just a matter of whether you take advantage of them or not. And the one thing I'll disagree with Chris on there is Derek actually, we can criticize Derek for a lot of things. 2 things he does not do. 2 things he does well. Let's put it that way. He throws the deep ball well.
So pretty. And
he doesn't put the ball in danger a lot of the times. And to a fault at times where he's trying to avoid a sack, he got an intentional grounding that he should have never gotten because he was trying to avoid a sack. Like, he didn't get sacked in that game, and it wasn't for a lack of pressure. He's actually, one of his better skills is avoiding turnovers, is avoiding interceptions. I know he had a couple at the beginning of the season, but generally speaking, that's something that you would say is a positive trait of his. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way very often. Sometimes you wish you would try to force the ball in a little bit more. But so that's I think that's an advantage for the Saints. I think if they can force several turnovers in this game, and Jameis is coming off a game where he had 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, like he's going to throw them against the Ravens. Like, you look at the final stat line and you're like, yeah, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. But like Chris said, 2 that bounced right off the defender's chest. So, that's going to be the story, man.
Yeah, and the big one I'm worried about, I mentioned, obviously, Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford, that run game, you can't be ripping up 4 or 5 yards a carry, man.
Yeah, and again, like I said, like Nick Chubb's currently averaging 2.7 yards per carry in his 3 games back. So if the Saints have a pulse in their run defense, they should be able to stop him. I'm just not sure they do. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe they're going to go full Jameis and not even give Chubb the ball. They're just going to be like, Jameis threw the ball like 40-something times against the Chargers in his last game. Jameis threw the ball 46 times for 235 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions.
Oh, Chris has mentioned, obviously, how key the turnover margin is going to be in this game. Browns have been awful this year. They've been able to generate that pressure, but they're not getting those takeaways.
No, the Saints, it's different because the Rams lost too. And I don't know, like when I looked up and Bobby talked about this, I heard Bobby mention this on the broadcast. And so I looked it up after Sunday, and like going into the Rams and whoever they lost to, I can't remember who they lost to. There was 12 teams with a positive turnover differential, right? The Saints are one of them at +4. Only the Saints, who are +4, and the Bears, who are +8. did not have a winning record. And the Bears are 4-5. It's not like the Bears were like sitting there at like 1-9. And now the Rams were 4-4. They're 4-5. So of those 12 teams, the Saints are the only team that is more than one game under 500 plus. And so if you look at all of the teams that have a positive turnover differential heading into this week, they had a combined winning percentage of 675. They were 73-35. The Saints are 3-7. Just think about that. Like, that's how crazy that 7-game losing streak is when you're not turning over the ball. And the Saints, again, one of Derek Carr's best traits has been not turning over the ball. And he actually, I would say, like, his first couple games in this season, or at least weeks 2 and 3. He had one in week 2. He had one in week 3. He had one in week 5. That was probably his worst interception of the season, the one he just kind of threw up. I think he was trying to throw it out of bounds. So, like, that's why, like, the Saints should be better. Like, when you have a positive turnover differential, you shouldn't be a 3-7 team. That defies all reason. It's because it's not like you could say, oh, yeah, okay, the Texans intercepted Jared Goff 5 times in that game. The Saints haven't had a game where they had, like, 4 or 5 takeaways. They've just been consistent. They've gotten 1 or 2 a game, and they haven't, like, you played an entire game against the Falcons, didn't turn the ball over. It was a 20-17 game. You turn the ball over once, you lose that game. That's why those turnovers are so massive. Like, that interception from Tyron is one of the things that swung that matchup. So if they could continue to do that and play some more consistent defense like they did last week, they should win a few more games. But yeah, I think that does come down. But either way, I thought that was a really, really good info from Chris. He really broke down a lot for us.
Yeah, and definitely looking forward to this Jameis Winston. What do you call it? The
Jameis.
Yeah.
Jameis.
Let's see what the Jameis in Cleveland's like, because, he might be fun and goofy and all, but all we care about what's he doing on the field, and bring some of those picks our way, please.
Oh, I just hope he eats a W. If he eats a W in his pregame, oh, man. If he eats a W in his postgame, it's embarrassing. If he eats in the pregame, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Embarrassing for us, I mean.
I know he'll definitely be eating good food. I don't know about W's here.
Yeah. Yep. Eating some L's. How about that? All right. Good stuff. We're going to end this segment. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. Thanks again, Chris Easterling, Browns reporter for the Beacon Journal. And we will be coming back. We'll be getting into X Factors, breaking down what we think will swing this matchup in Saints Browns. Again, we're getting back into a real preview episode. And I think we're going to keep doing it until the 8-0 finish is dead.
Okay.
That's my goal. So if you can win this week, you get a bye week. You get to feel good about yourself. You lose this week, and then it's like 3-8. Ooh, all the good vibes from Darren might be ebbing away as you try to digest the loss to Jameis and the Browns. It's not what you want. So we'll talk about it. Either way, we'll be coming back. Subscribe, rate, do your thing. Who dat? Go Saints. Stick around. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller, closing things out here. One more segment, heading into week 11. Browns 2-7 facing the Saints 3-7 at the Dome, bringing Jameis Winston back. It was your wish going into this season. Oh, maybe we'll get that Jameis Winston revenge game. Well, I don't know how much revenge there is, because I'm pretty sure if there was revenge coming, it would have been Jameis trying to make Dennis Allen cry. Dennis Allen isn't here. Maybe he'll cry somewhere else. I don't know. I don't know what Dennis is up to these days. I don't know if he's watching. I am curious what his experience was if he watched that game sitting on the couch being like, man, that team looks great. What happened? What changed?
Yeah, I'm curious to see, too, with Dennis, where he ends up resurfacing, because I don't think he's done in the NFL. Or maybe he goes to college. Who knows? Maybe. That actually wouldn't be a terrible move for him, is to, because I think like his style would fit a college team better, which has to be a little bit more programmatic. And, you're not dealing with the personalities aren't as huge, although they are now with NIL. So maybe it wouldn't work as, like, I think maybe like 10 years ago, he would have made a lot of sense as a college coach, and maybe not so much anymore. But yeah, he'll get another coaching opportunity. It's just a question where, again, I compare him to Spags. And when I said that, people are like, how could you possibly compare this guy to Spags? I'm like, they are the same guy. We know for sure Dennis won't be getting into broadcasting.
Yeah, I think we can say that with certainty that we will not see Dennis Allen on a pregame show or anytime soon. But all right, this isn't about Dennis Allen. We are moving on, and we're continuing into the second week of Rizzy Ball. And here's the thing: if you can win this game, if you can find a way to win this game, going into that bye week on a 2-game winning streak and feeling like, maintaining that idea that like, wow, what if we do the unthinkable and win out? Like, again, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it is kind of, as long as that idea exists, it's fun to think about, right? And so we'll see. But we're going to break down X factors here. And so, Steve, we'll start with you. Defense, on the defensive side of the ball, where do you see the X factor in this matchup?
I'm going to go to that D-line. I need to see the stuff in the run, man. That's been the biggest issue. And I think, I'd be kind of in that mode of, I want you to throw the ball, Jameis, stack it up front, and daring this Browns squad to basically throw, because those rushing yardage, we've seen the team struggling with. And I just think that would be the biggest strength of the Browns. If they can get the run game going, would be detrimental to this Saints squad. Worries me the most. Obviously, though, the tight end in Njoku is definitely a fear too there, but you got to get off the field. And I think like being able to stop that run game and cutting down on those second and shorts would help a lot with this team. So I need the guys up front, especially, I guess, focusing more on the interior, stuff that run, please, and set up those longer down situations for them, just because I think the secondary could feast on a Jameis Winston, even though they are depleted.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of funny when you talk about it, because Ugo Amadi covering a David Njoku is going to be kind of funny to watch, because David Njoku's massive,
right?
And
that's scary.
Ugo's not. Let's just put it that way. Ugo is not massive, but I kind of put it on. I'm going to kind of flip that and I say like, yeah, I think you are going to load up to stop the run, and so a lot of it's going to come down to how well do the cornerbacks hold up on the outside. And I thought Joe Woods, was pretty blunt about his assessment of Alontae Taylor's performance, and it kind of echoed a lot of the things I felt and I said coming out of that game, which was it wasn't all terrible, but Alontae will be the first person to tell you that he needs to deliver in those moments, and you can't have those pass interference penalties. When you're in a position to make a play, you have to make a play. So this was Joe Woods kind of talking about a few things relative to Alontae's performance against the Falcons.
He was up and down. Obviously, he had his struggles. It was good to see him finish the game. And every year you're going to have a game or two that it didn't go your way. But I think the growth from him was on the sideline. How he dealt with the issues, we talked him through. He talked to some of the veteran guys, got his head together and went back out and did some good things. But I definitely want more consistency out of him. Obviously, eliminate the penalties and eliminate the big plays.
How do you notice that difference on the sideline? Is it he's just not yelling as much, or not as animated? What does he do differently that you notice that guy's like?
Yeah, it's just like if you're upset, somebody's going to know. So it's just one of the things And the thing is, you got to, playing football, you got to let it go. Everything's not going to go your way, but you can't let that play affect the next play. And that was really what I was trying to get him, just to calm down, go back out, and just rely on technique.
Is there almost some, I don't know if rust is the right word, but because he had been inside for so long, now the season when he's on the outside, are you seeing that transition differently?
It's a little bit different out there. Like you said, if you're inside, you got space on both sides. But outside, you know what you're dealing with. You're dealing more of the vertical concepts, different type of route trees. And he's fine. He can do it. Yeah, he just got to really wire into the technique and the details.
Yeah, and, I agree with Joe there 100%. And I think we talked about this on Monday. One of the things that I noticed on the sideline throughout that game, and just because I've watched Alontae, I was on the sideline every game last year, and there were moments that if they had happened last year, I think he would have come over to the sideline and been very frustrated and shown it, and really, emotional energy, but negative emotional energy, right? Because there's two different kinds of emotional energy. Not all emotional energy is positive. And the Rams game last year, this is the one I point to specifically, he got benched, and you could tell he got benched because he was having a tirade on the sideline. Right. And it was just, it's a young player thing, and it's just not handling adversity very well. And one thing I noticed in that game, he had some moments where they were very frustrating, and it probably felt like, hey, I played perfect coverage and they still completed a ball over my hand. And he kind of came over to the sideline, he just kind of did his thing. And I just felt like it was a much more mature look for a young player. And that's what you want to see. So I agree with Joe in that sense. One of the things I was encouraged by, not only in that matchup, was that Alontae did have some struggle moments, but he didn't allow that to, the one thing coaches say, and one thing that's very true is you can't allow the last play to get, you can't lose twice on one play because you lost on one play and that's why you lost the next play. And I think that in last year specifically was something that would happen to Alontae. He would allow getting beat once to get him beat twice. And he didn't do that in this game. So I was happy with that. But now you got to bounce back. You got to improve. And so that's the X factor is, okay, you talk about, hey, I want to force James to throw. Yes. But I also want to take advantage of when we do force him to throw. And, those turnovers, I think, are going to be what, if you can force them, like the Browns beat the Ravens because the Ravens dropped two easy interceptions late in that game. You can't do that, and if they intercept those balls, they win. You drop them, you lose.
Yeah, that's going to kind of bleed into the X factor for me on the offensive side of the ball for the Saints.
Gotcha. Well, first, I do want to listen to Tyrann Mathieu because he talked about facing Jameis, and he had some interesting things to say. We'll also talk about I also want to talk about what he had to say about the awkward moment at the end of the season. So let's hear Tyrann on that.
And quite honestly, man, we just gotta catch the ones that he throw to us. You know what I mean? So, but Jameis is playing great, man. He's always been one of those guys that when you plug him in, man, like he gives you that kind of that surge of energy that you need. So, I mean, you could see that. Obviously, last week didn't really go that way. I thought the Chargers played well defensively, but we just got to do a great job. Obviously, winning first down, getting those guys in those second and longs, and then just trying to capitalize off just making it hard for him.
On a more personal level, what do you expect the challenge would be from him or just preparing for him this week?
I mean, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be funny. James is a good dude. He probably tells me he's going to throw the ball at me before he actually do it. You know what I mean? So he's one of those kind of competitors. But it'll be fun to see him. I mean, he knows us. We know him. I'm pretty sure it'll be somewhat of a homecoming. You know what I mean? A lot of people in New Orleans love the guy. We do too. But yeah, I'm expecting a shot first play of the game, James. So throw it up there. You know what I mean?
How fun is that for a guy when you just go back to almost thinking? How fun is that for a guy like James when you get a chance to go back?
Yeah, it's fun, man. We all put a lot of work in, and some of us bounce around. Yeah, man, it's fun like being around guys that like believe in you. I think a lot of guys in this locker room believed in him. I know him and DC had a great relationship. You know what I mean? So I know he's going to be excited to see us for sure.
Do you reflect at all on just knowing Jameis as a person, his last play with because I know it was a little controversial where he handed off to Jamal Williams. But
are you talking about the one where the offensive lineman caught me?
Huh?
Talking about the play where the offensive lineman caught me at the one.
No.
That was the play before that.
But that's what happened, though.
Oh.
You know what I mean? I feel like I got a hand in that. You know what I'm saying?
But just knowing Jameis's personality, if you could reflect on that whole situation a little bit. I know that DA didn't like it, but at the same time, it said something about his attitude towards his teammates.
And I think he's one of those guys. Like he's conscious of what all of us are kind of going through, right? And I think that situation, that particular play is, we got a running back here that had 20 touchdowns the season before and he couldn't get in the paint. And so I think that was really the whole purpose of him making that decision. It was literally just to get Jamal a touchdown. So I don't think it came from a bad place. Like he isn't that type of guy. You know what I mean? He has a lot of respect for his coaches. He has a lot of respect for the position too. So whether it be a head coach, GM. But yeah, I don't think that was any kind of ill intent. He was just trying to get that dude in the end zone. You know what I mean?
I love how he blames himself.
Well, it was funny because sorry, I forgot that would happen.
That's all right.
It's funny because that was Brett Martell from the AP asking that question, and I knew Tyrann. I understood the joke Tyrann was making, and Brett very much didn't. And he was like, no, wait, no, I'm not talking about that. And it's just no, he's just he remembers that play very differently.
Yeah,
because it would not have happened if he had just gone into the end zone. I think he was contemplating, because in that moment, it almost felt like Tyrann was in on it. And he was going to get tackled at the 1 so they could get Jamal a touchdown. He said after the game that he was really just contemplating, should I just go down here? Should I do that kind of good team thing of going down so we can end the game rather than giving him the ball back? And so while he was contemplating that, the offensive lineman chased him down from behind. It's kind of an embarrassing moment for him. Like, really, you let the offensive lineman catch you? And so it's just funny that he remembers that moment as the play that I got chased down from behind.
Yeah, much differently. It's like, it's kind of on me, he said,
Yeah, and so, I thought a lot of what he said there was interesting. And, like this team is very well aware of what Jameis likes to do, and he's going to want to go over the top. He's going to want to hit him. Kind of like, okay, catch the ones that are thrown to us, which is, true, right? Like if the Ravens caught the interceptions that Jameis threw directly to them, they win that game. Instead, they lost that game. But I do think, if you're a Saints fan who despised Dennis Allen, and I know there's a lot of them out there, right? You owe Jameis a debt of gratitude. Because while I don't think his intent was to get DA fired, I do think that play, that moment in what would have otherwise been a celebration of holy crap, we won 4 of our final 5 games. We just blew out the Falcons 48-17. This was a coming out party for what this team felt like it could be. Instead, we spent that entire day talking about that the team went rogue on Dennis Allen.
Right.
And then his handling of that situation was so bungled and so ham-handed and missed the point, missed the boat entirely, that to me, you look back and say, where did the slope of Dennis Allen really getting fired begin? Because I've said this, like, you don't get fired in that situation until you lose the locker room. And I think at that point, in a moment that should have been kind of a success story of bouncing back through adversity and whatnot, it ended up creating negative emotion that was a slope that ended up in week 9 of this season. Like, that's where the slope ended of the locker room kind of falling apart around him and getting fired. And so to me, Jameis's decision, and he can say it was a team decision, that was Jameis. No other, at the end of the day, it's the quarterback who snaps the ball that makes that decision. And if Derek Carr was in there, if Jay Kaner was in there, no way that happened. It was Jameis's decision at the end of the day, because he's the quarterback and he's the one who either goes down or hands the ball.
So right, because Jamal wasn't like, come on, give me the touchdown.
No, Jamal's not begging for a charity touchdown.
Right.
The team might have wanted it for him. And honestly, it was DA's fault, because if DA just says, hey, fine, do it. Rub it in. Then he doesn't have to apologize. Like Arthur Smith is probably still pissed because he's run up the score or whatever, but you could at least sell that as, you're a rival. We're going to score a touchdown. And he should have done that. He didn't. So that was his first mistake. Then putting Jameis in a situation where Jameis could do the funniest thing possible was his second mistake. And then his third mistake was going up there and not handling it in a situation where you back your team publicly and you rip them to shreds behind closed doors like any common sense understanding coach would have done. And from that point, it was always, you kind of got him back in training camp in California. Then he came back here and everything kind of turned back into what it was last year. And from that point, so Jameis, in my opinion, was as impactful in getting Dennis Allen fired as anybody else. And James Hurst, who's now with WDSU as an analyst, said the same thing. When DA got fired, he was like, I think it all started then. I think it all goes back to that point where he threw his team under the bus and apologized to the Falcons rather than backing the team publicly. So again, if you don't like Jameis, if you don't whatever, you send him a thank you note if you were thankful that the head coach got fired, because I think he had a big role in it.
I feel you right there, because the aftermath of it, we know that was all BS, lining up in victory formation to get a touchdown, whatever, on Jameis there for not listening to the head coach. But the aftermath with the post-game press conference, the apology, you began to lose a lot of your players right there, and then just put even Saints fans over the edge on you that had this negative, perception of things. So I agree that was almost the beginning of the end for Dennis, because so many folks were in disbelief how you're apologizing to the Atlanta Falcons and calling out your players instead of having their backs.
Yep. 100%. And so, it's funny because I actually think Tyron is right in that Jameis, that was not his intention. Like, his goal was not necessarily to go out there and give a middle finger to Dennis Allen, but he didn't care if he did.
Right.
And I said this at the time, like, DA created the monster in that situation. Like, he put Jameis in a situation where he not only wanted to do that, but was willing to do that because he had nothing to lose. And that to me is that slope. And so we kind of, we talked that to death, but I just, this is the chance. And that's why it's so funny. Like DA got fired at the funniest time possible, because it came right before a Falcons game, which was like, if you draw a line back to that Falcons game in week 18 last year, that's the slope right there to another Falcons game where you win it and kind of get all this positive emotion. And then Jameis Winston kind of strolls back into the building like, you miss me? I just think it's funny. I think it's good. I think that's just peak drama that only the NFL can provide.
NFL script writers working hard, baby.
Right. But all right, that wasn't really an X factor. It kind of devolved into whatever it was. But let's go to the offense. I don't have a ton on offense. I kind of think the offensive X factor is, can you get back to what you were with Erik McCoy in weeks 1 and 2, and particularly running the ball, that wide zone scheme that we all talked about and really hasn't delivered in the way we had hoped. But what is your X factor for this game?
For me, it's got to be ball security. You look at this Cleveland Browns team; they're tied for the worst in the takeaways in the NFL. They've got 1 interception on the season. That's from a linebacker, not even from a cornerback. It is wild. I know, but boggles your mind. They have no interceptions from their secondary, and hopefully this team, like Derek Carr, can keep the ball secure. And I don't want to be that team that gives the Browns their first INT from a corner this season. It's utterly ridiculous to think about. I think they're minus 7-2 in the giveaway takeaway ratio. So please just keep the ball secure. And I think that's with the way this offense has struggled too. The defense is tough, but definitely has not been able to take advantage of getting the ball with all these pressure they are putting on the quarterback. So we'll see how that turns out.
That is crazy. I didn't realize that. It's a good stat. Like I mean, and the funny thing is, like, interceptions, I think there's this idea that interceptions are created from like perfect coverage. And it's actually not true, because when you're in perfect coverage, the ball doesn't go there. Right. So like if the best cornerbacks in the NFL aren't really getting opportunities for interceptions all that often because no one's throwing at them, right? Like Marshawn didn't get a ton of interceptions, but that's because they were throwing at Paulson, and Paulson's the one who got interceptions because they were like, I want to attack that guy. And it's funny because, you would think a team with an elite pass rush, because that's honestly more often than a cornerback getting an interception because he covered a play perfectly. It's the quarterback is under pressure. He makes a bad decision, or it gets tipped, or he gets hit as he's throwing, and it kind of just flutters out. And you would think that would result, when you have a Myles Garrett constantly putting pressure on a quarterback, you would think that would result in tips and overthrows and stuff like that. And apparently it hasn't.
That was wild. Last 2 for the Saints, they didn't have the pass rush, but they had the takeaway numbers.
Yeah. So I mean, the Saints, when you look at the teams that are +4 or better in turnover differential, only one team in that category is what I would consider not good. And it's the Bears, and the Bears are 4-5, right? When you think about 3-7, for a team that is +4 in turnover differential, that's unheard of.
Right.
And it really kind of underscores just how insane that 7-game losing streak was. Because like if you're not turning the ball over on offense and you're creating turnovers on defense, you're creating takeaways, you win games. Like that's just how the NFL works. So yeah, no, I agree with you. And I'm just gonna let that ride, because I agree. If you can sustain offense, and part of sustaining offense is not turning the ball over, you can count on 1 or 2 turnovers from the Browns. I think like Jameis is going to give you at least one that you can especially a guy like Tyron. If I'm Jameis, I was actually curious. The fact that none of Tyron's 36 interceptions in his career have come off of Jameis is actually kind of wild. He has played him several times.
That's interesting.
But like, if I'm a guy that puts a lot of dangerous balls up in the air, like Tyron's the last guy I want to face, because, and I don't have this quote, but like I mentioned in the last episode, like Tyron's interception against Kirk Cousins, that wasn't luck. That was knowing what Kirk liked to do. And he read that, hey, this is a guy, he goes through his progressions. When he gets through them, he likes to get aggressive and target a dig route over the middle of the field, because it's like, that's just, he sees that as an opportunity. Well, Tyron knows he likes to do that. And he honestly could have had 2 interceptions, because he had a near one at the end of the first half, and he had one in the second half in that critical moment. And I asked Joe Woods about that, and he was just like, that's what makes him special. Like, he not only knows all of that information, he processes it in real time, and he knows what you want to do before you even do it. And that's just, when you have a guy who processes at such a high level, It's dangerous for quarterbacks. And that's why you want that veteran safety as opposed to a young safety who might be a little bigger, stronger, more athletic, but isn't processing at that high level. And the safety position, in my opinion, is one of the processing and knowing what you're looking at is more important than a lot of other things. Like Tyron even said, it was like, man, I wish like Grant Delpit for the Browns is like the exact build of what you would if you designed him in a lab for a free safety, like 6'3", 200 pounds, can run a 4.4. Like it's like if he was like, if I wish I was that size, if I was that size, I would just be a bully. Like Tyron has to be what he is because he's never been a big. Like he's 5'9" on a good day, 5'9" in cleats on asphalt, like 200, 190 maybe. Like he exists in the NFL. He's got 36 career interceptions by taking advantage of what quarterbacks don't even know their reads are, their tendencies are. Like they think I'm doing something that no one's prepared for, and then in reality, Tyron knew about that 3 weeks ago. And Joe Woods, I asked him, is like that's what makes him special. He does stuff like that, and so I'm sure he has. He's of all the quarterbacks in the NFL. I guarantee you, Tyron has some tips that Jameis doesn't even realize he has that he's going to try to take advantage of in this game. And, one or two of those in big moments, and that swings the game. So I agree with you. Winning the turnover battle, it's always important, but it's even more important this week.
Yeah, and A-Bears mentioned the fact with Tyron, sometimes we've seen some missed tackles or bad angles, but he's going to make up for it in the end because of the way, like you said there too, he just processes the game. The mind is a valuable thing. And yes, some of those physical attributes, he's older now, so it isn't quite as fast or, adept at tackling as he once was, but you still, that positioning and just knowing how to be in the right place, the right time, or being in that quarterback's head is huge. Yeah,
and Tyron has owned up to, I don't think this has been his best season by stretch.
You mentioned that, right?
Particularly from a tackling perspective, he missed a lot of tackles. And one of the reasons Tyron is such an effective leader is because he's more than willing to own up to that. Johnson.com wrote a really good story kind of breaking all of this down. And, one of the things Tyron said is like, when you've been in the league as long as him and you've been an elite player in the league as long as him, one thing that happens is you don't necessarily get coached the way that younger players get coached. And some coaches, especially the not as confident coaches, like the coaches that you would look at and say, it's not a particularly good coach. They're afraid to criticize those veteran players and call them out in front of everyone when they make a mistake. And so he's learned is like, I'm going to call myself out. I'm going to make everyone aware that I know I didn't play well enough, and I'm going to hold myself accountable so that they feel like they need to do that themselves. And he even says, like, I think I have like 6 missed tackles over the last 2 weeks. He's paying attention to that. He is not blind to the fact that he's missed opportunities to make big plays this year. But, to me, he does so many other things that, he's so important on this team as from a leadership perspective, from that ball hawking perspective. If he doesn't make that interception and turn that around, I think the Saints probably lose that game. So,
and just a little side note with Tyron too, just an awesome dude for the community. We saw him, handing out free turkeys this week.
Does it every year.
Right.
Yeah. No, he's from a New Orleans perspective. I don't know if there's anyone more impactful on the Saints roster, maybe Cam, that actually cares about the community. Like a lot of people will say they do. A lot of people will do events and stuff. Tyron grew up here. Like this means a lot more to him than just being a football player in the city. Like, and again, that's not only true of Tyron. There's several players in this team that you would look at and be like, they are very, very impactful and influential, and they care about the city, and they go out of their way and they spend their hard-earned money and their time, their valuable time during an NFL season. That's a grind to go out and do stuff like that. And he's one of them. So yeah, he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Like Jono Barnes, I don't know what you call him, an influencer or what, but he says for him, this shit's more than the game.
This is the second episode in a row we've Jono Barnes has been name dropped in this podcast. I don't even know if he listens. I'd be surprised if he does. But yeah, good for him. If you don't follow Jono, follow him. He's hilarious.
Hilarious, right?
Yeah. Anyway, good stuff. Anything else you want to hit before we move on here and close out this podcast?
Man, we've seen Merry Rizmas. I'm just hoping for a great Riz giving this Sunday and let that streak continue into the bye week. Feeling good going into the holiday.
Yes, give Riz to all those that you are Rizful for.
Yes.
All right. That's a good way. It's a good way to wrap this stuff up. Again, thanks to Chris Easterling for coming on. Thought this was a really good episode in terms of a lot of content here. Threw a lot at you. Hope y'all enjoyed it. If you did, do us a favor, hit the like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, throw us a rating, throw us a review on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your listening information in your ear holes, that sort of thing. We'll be back on Monday with a post-game pod. Hopefully it's another post-win pod. We'll have a little different schedule next week because of the bye. We'll probably do a 2-episode week just to kind of take it easy, kind of chill a little bit like the team is over the bye. I'm looking forward to it personally. It's week 12 is a long time to wait before that bye week. But it's well earned, I think. Yeah, at first you're like, oh man, that's nice for the Saints. Obviously for them. But I feel like this year they might have been able to use that bye week a little earlier, especially with all the injuries. But that's how things shake out. No, I mean, I think it's ideal if you are not 3-7. like if you were even hovering around 500, this would have been a perfect time to lick your wounds and move. Now it's like it's probably came a couple weeks later than it would have been ideal. But either way, we're here inside Black and Gold. Thanks everyone. As always, we're going to keep this thing going, regardless of what happens after the bye. And hopefully it's a wow, we're going, we're rolling to the finish, and not a okay, let's start talking about draft picks. But all that said, thanks again, everyone who listens. Love y'all. Who dat? Later, Saints fans.